Portland, Oregon. Can y'all hear me? I think I need to move this. Okay. Can y'all hear me? Cool. My name is Maritza Galvan. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm a first-year grad student in the MFA Print Media program and a second year in the MA Critical Studies program. Thank you all for being here, whether you're here physically or streaming in. Before we begin our program, I would like to acknowledge today that we honor the indigenous people whose traditional ancestral homelands we stand on, the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Tumwater, Watlala bands of the Chinook, the Tualatin, Kalapuya, and many other indigenous nations of the Columbia River. I'm gonna just it is important to acknowledge the ancestors of this place and to recognize that we are here because of the sacrifices forced upon them. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, their descendants, past, present, and future. Tonight, we present Oliver Jackson in conversation with Paul Mullowney of Mullowney Printing and PNCA faculty and print media program chair, Matthew Letzelter, as part of the Hallie Ford School of Graduate Studies Fall 2021 lecture series. I'm gonna go through the bios now. Oliver Lee Jackson is a painter, sculptor, draftsman, and printmaker whose works are grounded in figuration. Since 1982, Jackson's studio has been in Oakland, California. His printmaking, which he approaches as drawing, incorporates varied intaglio techniques, as well as woodblock prints on paper and canvas. For the past few years, his printing has been done exclusively by Paul Mullowney, Mullowney Printing. Jackson has collaborated with musicians, writers, and dramatists who include Julius Hemphill, Marty Ehrlich, Paul Carter Harrison, Michael Harper, and others. His most recent print project is a limited edition folio, Dear Friend 2021, combining photogravures of Jackson's drawings with handwritten music manuscripts by Julius Hemphill. Jackson's works have been exhibited in museums and galleries for more than 5 decades. In 2019, the National Gallery of Art presented a solo exhibition of his recent paintings curated by Harry Cooper, Senior Curator of Modern Art. Additionally, an exhibition spanning over 50 years of works is currently on view at the St. Louis Art Museum. His work has also been exhibited in the Museum of Modern Art and Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York, the National Gallery of Art, Washington, D.C., and Blanton Museum of Art, and numerous others. Paul Mullowney is a master printer and founding partner of Mullowney Printing in Portland. Trained at Crown Point Press, San Francisco, he has worked at print studios in Japan and Maui, Hawaii, and he's also taught here at PNCA and the San Francisco Art Institute, as well as numerous printmaking workshops in America and Japan. A little bit about Mullowney Printing. With studios in Portland and San Francisco, Mullowney Printing is a multifaceted print studio, focusing on publishing and printing fine art prints, etchings, woodcut, photogravure, direct gravure, screen print, and letterpress editions by leading and emerging nationally recognized contemporary artists. In 2021, Mullowney Printing founded the Undergrowth Educational Print Fund, whose mission is to promote printmaking educational programming through dynamic funded apprenticeships and residencies for emerging printmakers. Now, without further ado, please welcome Oliver Jackson and Paul Mullowney. Oh, forgot that part.
I have to take off either the glasses or the mask, so maybe the mask. Unmask. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you everyone for being here. We're here with the graduate students from the MFA program. Well, that's a redundancy, but I'm excited to see you all. And thank you, Matthew, for putting everything together. together. And thank you, Oliver, for coming to Portland. You just came here 2 days ago, and we jumped right in and started making monoprints. Well, we should call them monotypes. I guess for the printmakers in the audience, there is a distinction. There is no repeatable matrix in what we're doing right now on the offset press. Matthew, do you want to moderate and jump in?
Sure, we can begin. I usually go into our core themes during these lectures around craft, collaboration, and community. And I'll just go ahead and jump in and start around craft. And thinking about your work, you cross multiple disciplines. You're currently working with print, and I'm curious how your printmaking approaches are impacted by other mediums, and do they cross over easily? Are you doing different types of work when you do print versus, say, a painting or a sculpture or a collaborative piece with someone else? Like, how does that interchange back and forth?
For me, easily. I don't make much of a distinction in media. I understand that, I understand how it's talked about as distinct, painting and or printmaking. But I don't think of it that way when I'm working. I tend to be attracted to the media for aesthetic reasons, and it's important to me that I'm comfortable with the materiality of a given medium, so that the demands of the media feel natural. It's not like I'm shifting and there's a break. If I'm working on a painting and I move to printmaking, it's obvious to me that there's different materials. But the shifting for me is not a break in the thinking or feeling. It's intimate. It's immediately intimate. If you understand what I mean. I understand clearly the academic distinctions between them, but in working, I don't feel those distinctions at all. And I'm talking about the feeling. Yeah. Hope that answers it well enough. Use the microphone. Oh, should I use it? Oh.
I'll ask one quick more one, and then I'll pass it on to Paul. The other day we were at the studio talking about collaboration, and I thought it was a interesting conversation about what that means to you and how collaborations are different between what group you're working with and whether you're taking the center role or if you're stepping back and supporting that. And I'd like to hear more about that.
Just got something for you. You're talking to me, basically? Or? Well, yeah. Well, what I said before was that the way I see collaboration is when I am serving a servant in a collaboration, or when they are serving me in a collaboration. In this particular instance with Paul at this point, is more of a service to my conception, and they're really quite kind in working to help me achieve that completion or realization, so that the technical skills that I need and the information that I need is in service for what I want to do. But I have collaborated, for instance, my friend Paul Carter Harrison, and he's a dramatist and he's putting on the play. I service him. It's not about me particularly. I'm chosen because he wants me to do the work, but it's in service of his conception, and that's crucial. So that I'm not in competition in any way with what it is that I am, what it is that he's doing. And so those are the distinctions I make in collaboration. Now, for instance, in the folio, this is an interesting collaboration because the folio that we're putting together, the print folio, is after the death of a very, very close friend who was a musician, Julius Hemphill, and we were very close as friends, but he's a master musician, and he's well known and recognized. But my tribute to him as a friend was to make a folio well after he's passed on. And then what I'm trying to say is that we had collaborated on projects. I had, in his concert, made, in service to his concert when he was alive, I had made sets for musicians. Again, I was in service for him. Okay? Now when I want to make the folio in remembrance of my friend, then they're in service of me and with that concept. And it's rather complicated. Very complicated, because it involves a kind of collaboration. In his shop, people who deal with text, printing, it's complicated. And that's very interesting, that what I want, and I'm very particular about what I want. Try to be nice about it, but nice is not in it in terms of achieving what you want. You should be polite, but we want to reach the place that I'm satisfied with. And so in the collaboration, everybody has to be on board for the vision, regardless of what your position is in the collaboration. You have to buy into the vision, it seems to me. Otherwise, it's just a job that you don't care about. So collaboration for me, I have to really care about it to collaborate. And so, in mentioning the folio, which is removed from my friends who died, it's complicated. For instance, Diane is working to collate and put material together. People are writing for it who have to send in text that has to be placed perfectly. Then you have to transfer drawings into copper plates. It's really complicated, but it's very interesting.
It's been going on for a year and a half. And we're still auditioning. So they're asking that we keep the microphones up against our mouth.
Oh, I see.
Sorry, everybody online, welcome. But it's 12 images, 3 images of text, beautiful box. We collaborated with the box maker, the portfolio maker.
I forgot to mention them, right?
Yeah,
The box
so,
maker, right?
and
Complicated.
it's an ongoing project that's getting there. We're very close.
Yes.
But the collaboration between master printer, so-called, and artist is, yeah, like you said, it's a complicated one, where some people don't see it as a real collaboration. Some publishers see it as the printers are very much in service to you. But when I'm printing, I try to bring what I know to the table in terms of my knowledge of Japanese papers and things, and then I don't know, I'm going with all this, but it's much different than collaboration's a big thing these days. I mean, a lot of young people are collaborating where it's not like a relationship between a sculptor and the foundry, or a painter and the print shop. It's like an equal. There is no hierarchy in certain forms of collaboration. I imagine that was the same with you and Julius, where
Well,
in a certain sense.
You just know you're in service. That's his vision. The real point I was making is not a hierarchy in that sense, but when I was collaborating with him, he's a musician. He's putting on a concert. It's his concert. He's got a concept, and he wants me to help visually to buy into the concept and give a visual push. You know, it should be subordinate to the concept.
Yeah. Hold the mic closer.
Yeah, yeah.
Hold
you
the
know
mic
what I mean.
closer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put the mic closer.
Uh-huh.
Thanks. Sorry to
I'm
interrupt.
not used to mics.
I know, it's hard.
In what you were talking about in this collaboration, it's like I need information. In order to develop a folio, I have very definite ideas, but they can be adjusted and made better by better information of how to achieve your vision. That's what's important. And that's why you deal with an expert like yourself. That, this is where I want to go, and then you go like, well, I think you could get there better if you use 4 wills instead of 2, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's what I need. That's important. That makes the objective better. The collaboration should bring more. Let me put it like this. I truly know what I want, but I have to make it. I haven't seen it yet. And in making it to see it, input is necessary. The goal is clear. And I know aesthetically when we're reaching it, but I need information. And I don't have all the information to achieve my goals. If I did, I wouldn't collaborate.
Right, right. I'll turn it back to Matthew, too. Everyone in the audience is telling us to keep it closer. So anyway, turn it back to Matthew because we also want to talk about. We were talking the other day about craft, and you've got very strong opinions about that. And here, let me turn it over to you so I don't hog the mic.
I do. Yeah. Oh, it's on me or what?
Well, I can further that. You know, there's been a separation of craft and the fine arts for some reason, and I don't know if that's academia, I don't know if that's the market, but it's never really separated. And we talked about that the other day, that we don't have to call it a craft, but we are using craft, and there's craft in what we're doing. And I'd love to hear a little bit more on that from your perspective.
Well, I don't care what the galleries call it, and I don't care what the art market calls it. I know it's craft involved. Now, the playing with words may confuse young makers that it's not involved, because the influence of the marketplace, that is the museums and the curators and all that, they don't make anything. So their understanding of craft is limited. It's not intimate. And if people who are like MFAs and students who are trying to become insiders in making, they need to know that craft exists clearly, whether it's talked about as not being a part of the fine arts. That's just talk. But we just got through talking about a collaboration where I need information. It's craft information. We're crafting something. I have a vision, and it's got to be objectified, and it takes materiality in doing something. It's got to be crafted. When I make a painting, it's crafted. And that simply means that the use of material and the skill and the know-how is involved. And there is formula involved, and it's developed. It's not formula necessary in front of the work. A craftsman that makes a cabinet, the formula may be in front of the work. It may be drawn up. In this case, when we're doing the folio, I have an objective, and the craftsmanship grows as the objective. It is not preconceived, but it's very demanding, if not more demanding, because you have to see it as it's being made rather than a plan. The plan inside is not physical. That's what the vision is, but it must become physical. The moment it becomes physical, crafting is involved. Is that clear?
Oh, yeah.
It should be. I'm finished.
So do you want to talk about how academia might have played a role in where you're at now?
Well,
you have a long,
wait a minute.
broad background.
Well, I was in academia. The academy is the academy. They don't make anything. We train people, and the arts is different than the rhetoric of the academy. When we enter into the academy or the university setting, we have to show and tell, like the sciences. The traditional academy did not have the natural sciences nor the arts involved, because it was the kind of rhetoric that is logic and mathematics and geometry, in which memory and that was your qualifications, whether you could speak language well and understood the stars. That was the science of the day. When we enter, we make things. That's a different thing entirely. Scientists have to prove it by experimentation. That was not a part of the original academy. Now, the tendency in the academy is always to place conception above actuality. Thinking above making. That's its pride. But if you look at the Empire State Building, thinking might be good, but it's got to stand. And engineers have to do more than conceptualize. They have to make the conceptual fit gravity, actual forces. You can live in your head, that's fine. But when you want to objectify, that is, make an object, a thing, out of materials, then conception has to prove itself in physicality. Now, the academy generally doesn't do that. The sciences and the arts do that. So we're really outsiders. And most art students get confused in the philosophy of art, whatever art is. The philosophy and an actual painting, which is not philosophy. It's a thing. And aesthetics are crucial. Philosophy of aesthetics is the examination of aesthetics, not the application of aesthetics, two different things. The examination of aesthetics is a philosophical concern. You don't need it to make a wonderfully aesthetic thing. You don't need it. You need a pair of eyes that can sort out and understand concepts in real color and physicality in a set of relationships that become very complex. So you have to develop an aesthetic sensibility, not a philosophy. I'm not down on philosophy. It simply does not make you have a aesthetic sensibility. It's practice. Looking at what people call nature and see the harmonies that are obvious on a gray day, how everything seems to work in a kind of harmony that makes the day have an aesthetic ambiance. As soon as the sun comes out, the ambiance changes and it's harmonic. You don't have to like it. I'm just talking about the aesthetic harmonic. You understand? The actual hue, the density of the air. I mean, it's like right now, it's cold out there too. But it all fits. It's something one can learn from, but you have to study it. Philosophy won't help you. That's an analyzation of, usually in philosophy, they're always analyzing what has been made from a viewpoint not of making. You have to be, you makers have to be careful with that, because they make a brilliant argument, because they're good at making brilliant arguments. I'm not putting them down. I'm just saying arguments don't help us. When you make things, you have to judge whether the harmonies for the objectification work. You understand that? No matter what you're talking about, death, happiness, all these profound things, if you want to objectify them in paint or wood or whatever, the materials have to support it. Most people talk too much as though the ideas could legitimate the structure. They don't. And hence, criticism, aesthetic criticism from your peers should be able to understand whether the work has a harmony if it's trying to be sculpture and express death. You see, but sculpture trying to express death. And by the way, that's hard to express, death, because it's an event. So when you try to express it in stone, your aesthetics had better be very good indeed, so that a person viewing it feels that death territory. Now I suggest, just a suggestion, there are people that can do this in spades, and one of them is Picasso in the Guernica. There's something absolutely solemn. You don't have to know about Guernica in the village. That's history. But when I stood before the solemnity and the gravity of the piece, moved me deeply. I don't need history. The piece did the work. If you understand what I'm talking about. It's enough of that.
So I get the impression the two of you work well together, and I'd love to hear a little bit from both of you, like how that started with the collaboration, and like what's special about the actual collaborating together.
No, I was kidding.
We just hit it off somehow. I don't know.
That's true. Well, I think that's important too. I don't think we were trying to, but it's necessary. You know, I was talking to my agent, Diane, and I said to her, well, I got a feeling this feels right. His expertise was understood. Everybody understands he's an expert. I need an expert. You know, when you got an expert, you know, you lean on him and go like, he better be right because he's an expert. But the point really is that then you want to get a feeling that when you're working together, you're going in the same direction. You don't want to ever have passive resistance. It's just somebody pretending to be into your vision but really not there. That's really rough. You know, it's called passive resistance, where you can feel that they're not as interested as you, or simply doing it for the money. So they don't have the commitment and the intensity. When I was committed with Julius's work, and even now, his program, I was deeply committed to it. I wanted to know the depth of his spiritual thrust in the concert, you know, the feeling, because I was committed to the music, and I wanted to know so I could try to give him that in what it was that he wanted from me, so that I would not be, I wanted to understand deeply, so I wasn't pushing ideas on him that were not about what he was about. And also, if I accepted doing it, I was in it. I wasn't half in it, I was in it on his terms. You know, that make sense?
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
I wanted to get a feeling, and I was talking to my agent again, Diane, and I was saying to her, he seems to be, it sounds very middle class, but a nice guy. I'm not interested in nice guys. I didn't really mean it like he had to be like Pollyannish, you know, nice. What I meant, it was just a feeling that I could get along with him as a human being. That's really what I mean.
We did butt heads a few times. I mean, we were showing a lot of your prints in the background, and people who are in intimately understand intaglio look at these prints from these plates. They're very, very, very difficult. So you found me. You came to me and asked if I could print them, and I looked at the plates, and I wasn't sure. There's marks going all over the place. You engraved, you did aquatint. Some of your aquatints were very, very weak. And I'm like, there's no
How
way
dare
we
you.
can pull this off. And I tried to get you to see them on Japanese paper, which is easier to pick up all that tonality, but you want that heavyweight Western rag paper, and we struggled with it. That was a long time ago, and we did some contract printing for you, and we pulled it off. And over time, we just started. He realized that there weren't many printers in the Bay Area. I'm not talking just about me, along with my crew and I shouldn't say the interns that work in my shop and stuff at the time. All very, very good printers, and not many printers in that Bay Area at that time who could even handle it. I think we're not gonna. We agreed not to drop names on the worldwide.
I don't know names.
I don't
know printers. I just know
You've gone through a few printers. I know that. You're just like, oh man, those guys don't know what the hell. So I'm glad I'm still on your good side. No, but we just figured it out. I mean, I am totally, and the people in my shop, and along with Harry Schneider, who is my business partner, we're totally committed to making the work. And that one plate we have is 3 feet wide and 4 feet long. It takes several hours to wipe, and then you run it through, and the pressure was wrong, and it's like, oh man. So it's challenging stuff, and that's why I like it. Yeah.
But also, you know, the difference, I think, because I was adamant about, I didn't want Shinkalei at one point. I wanted that. But what was interesting, very interesting, is you didn't say it couldn't be done.
Right.
See? That was expertise. It was suggested to me when what he was talking about. You know, if you did this, it would do that. I go like, yeah, but I want that. And he goes like, well, you know, if you do this, I go like, yeah, but I want that. And he said, I can get that. That was important.
Yeah, we don't say we can't do it. We say we'll try, and I'm not the first one who said that. But
well, you did it though.
No.
You didn't back off of it. You didn't say, well, I can't.
Yeah.
You took it on. See, like right now we're working. So I'm saying things like this. We're trying to work on a set of prints. Okay, so I go like, I want that to shine. I want some gold in there.
Yeah.
So I go like, gold.
Yeah.
You know, so
This happened just yesterday. I'm like, oh man, I don't know.
So he goes like, gold. I don't know if that'll do. I want to put some powder on it. That's what I want to do. It's in my head. So I talk to him. He's, I don't know. So he gives me information. So we go back and forth. Then we go like, well, let's try it.
Oh, Harry's like, let's try it. I'm like, no, we're gonna have cobalt powder floating around in the air, but it worked.
Well, but that's the trying. See, so that we got our heads together. It's not a question of always, I'm coming up with this. This is basically new for them doing this, but maybe it might work. If it doesn't, then we won't do it again.
Yeah.
So to be able to take, you don't think of it as risks so much, but you're trying to think ahead. You haven't done it before. You don't know if it'll work, but you have some idea that it will, but you got to be concrete about it. See, again, that making process, it's conceptual. I think this will work. He says, well, I don't know. I haven't seen it. See, that's still in the head. That's still all head stuff. He gives a good reason why it wouldn't work. That's still head. I give a decent reason why, not so good as his, why I think it'll work, because I don't know the technical. But then I go like, well, let's try it. And then we'll find out for sure. That's real collaboration too. See?
Yeah.
And it's really exciting. When it doesn't work, you learn. There's not a place that when you are thinking about making something and stepping into actually making it, that if it doesn't prove the particular thing you want to do, doesn't prove out, you learn as much from that as when it does prove out. As a matter of fact, you might learn more if it's not successful. Do you understand? Because then you know that powders like this on paper like this, all powder may not work, or metallic ones, so you've got information. So it's almost like there are no failures. They're disappointments, but they're not, you don't think of them as failures.
All printmaking is problem solving. I say that to my students all the time. But I think it is risk taking, and sometimes those risks are heartbreaking. If you're in it with commitment, it is risky business sometimes.
Well, how heartbreaking is it? Sounds like a soap opera or something. It ain't that heartbreaking. You don't give up on it. You know. Come on, let's not get too romantic about it. Well, I'm against, that's too arty. I do know exactly what you mean. The disappointments run deep. But we have to be careful not to be arty about them. It's like too much romance. Because you have to get over a disappointment to keep working. If you lean on it, you're in a soap opera, you stop. The fact is you don't stop. You're disappointed, but you keep right on going. You ain't that disappointed that you stop. Before I understood that I was a servant to the work, even though I had initiated the concept to objectify and make a work, but once begun, I was a devotee. And once I got on myself, I stopped. Be devoted to the work and service it. And then the disappointments, you won't stop. If you get on yourself, you stop. I'm a failure. I'm a this, blah, blah, blah. Too much. You really want to bring it forth as an object, as a thing in the world, then you get over the disappointments and keep at it. That's all I mean, you know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'll just follow up with one thing about this large plate we were printing. So this huge plate, you'd been working on it for many years, I think as many as 5, and I went over to the studio to pick it up, and man, I'm going to continue to photograph your studio. You wouldn't believe how beautiful and amazing his studio is. It's clutter everywhere.
Factory.
But beautiful clutter, and there's this, I took a picture of this jar that's like tipped over, and it says, and there's a label on it that says Dutch Mordant, and the Dutch Mordant was all gone. If you know anything about Dutch Mordant, it's hydrochloric acid, and you don't want it tipped over and like gassing off. It's like it's been there for
it didn't fall
20
over.
years, or whatever.
It had evaporated. It had been used up before, you know.
But Oliver dusts off this plate. It's literally on his drawing table, and he's got all kinds of stuff on it: hammers, nails, a human skull, all these things, in like 3 years of dust. And we dust it off and take it away. It took us 3 days to get the tarnish off. Anyway, I won't get into the technical stuff. Let's change subjects.
Shame on you.
So I think another question that I navigate myself, you know, the role of the artist, the teacher, the printer, and I'd love to hear like a little bit more like how that happens within your careers and like the difficulties between that, of switching between those different roles. I know both of you have different positions on that, but.
Well, for me, when I take a job, when I worked in university, it was a job. I was contracted to do a job. It was to train people. But the typical academy, they wanted to make a role out of it. People give you roles. But I was being paid to train people. But there were all kind of things that any not the first place I worked. Factories are like this. There's an ambiance, and if you're an IBM man, you got to have a certain ambiance, not just do the job you're paid for, but also carry the torch for the reputation of the institution. And that's boring because usually a lot of it is supercilious and pompous, but you have to do it. You have to be collegiate. But when I'm teaching, I don't have to be collegiate. I want to train. It's a whole different thing. So frequently the role for the university is that you look like what they want a professor to look like. But in the classroom, when I'm dealing with people who are trying to master the craft of a painting or whatever in training, we're not doing that. I know something they need to know, but through experience. My job is to test them that they master that. When that gets confused with art and all that, then we're drifting away from that. It's that. Can you do that? Do you understand? The understanding to show me. Then the East Coast, they can show me. And then if they're MFA people, when they get out of school, they should know enough to step into and train somebody else to that level. They don't need me anymore. The whole point is that they shouldn't need any more instruction to bring somebody else to a skill level that they were brought to, that they know how to do that. That's the point. Now, but you're assigned a professorial role now. That's very different. You have to go to meetings and talk endlessly about who's going to get a desk, and I mean all this. Who's going to get the desk and how many files and who gets it. And that's tedious. For me, it's interfering. A great deal of the academy likes that because they don't make anything. I'm so preoccupied with trying to get back to what the job is that the meetings, when they start talking about, well, we're getting 5 cabinets, but we only have 5, and we got 25 faculty members, and you get, and we start arguing about that, and it's irritating. You know, I mean, so, and they do that a lot. You know that I'm telling the truth. They can't help it. It's just part of the tradition. And what it is. And I won't mention the institution, but I've been working long enough inside academic institutions and been invited to teach semester 2 in very well-known institutions that they want me to come because I'm supposed to be good enough to train their people as a visiting artist. But when I get there, they seem to want me to bow down before their traditions. I'm going like, well, you hired me to do, what? That's the tree that George Washington stood under. I got like, okay. Well, that's all collegiate stuff, so you understand. Because they don't treat the football coach that way. They don't. It's something about making things, painting and sculpture that passes muster as culture, but we don't. We just make the stuff. And there's just a big difference between how you treat it and then how these objects are used to make culture, and how that takes on a life of its own. But you're not respected for what you actually do or the prestige you bring to the academic place. They kind of don't recognize. They recognize a football player, so, and they should. I'm not against that. I'm really serious. I mean, they understand. They don't play football, but they seem to understand they need money and new uniforms and a better house and a da-da-da-da. But when we ask for just easels, they go like, well, wait a minute, you guys can't, and I do mean this. Well, didn't you guys get some easels 5 years ago? You got like 5 years ago. Yeah, but we got people in, they worn out. They go like, wow. Now, that's so cheap. And I'm serious. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. I won't mention, these things don't really work. There are things like this. You want a new printing press, and you say it costs $10,000. Hey, $10,000. Listen, the The sports people, $10,000, absolutely no money whatsoever. Just in baseballs and bats for a season. Worn out, thrown away. There is an extraordinary disrespect for what it takes to give them cultural items, them choosing paintings, the materiality, what it costs, what a good instructor needs to instruct well. And I do mean it. Well, we had classes. I remembered all these things well. And you were drawing from the model, and we couldn't get new benches to place the things, the drawing pads on. Too expensive. Come on. I mean, it's ridiculous. But enough of that. I think I've explained what I see as this distinction between academic sense of us and the sense that I always had. And I want to say one more thing. I had many jobs before I worked in the academy. I'm not a person that went from school and right to school. I worked in factories. I worked in picking potatoes. I know what work is, and I know when I'm hired to do something, and I know what I'm obligated to. What I'm trying to say is this word role is defined. The word professor, that's a role. I teach painting. I know how to do that. But I had to learn what role I was to play from the word professor. Very different. Do you understand? I'm trying to be nice about it. YouTube gonna wear me out.
Well, I have nothing to add to that. I think what you were getting at is the role of master printer versus, we talked about how becoming a master printer, so-called, or coming out of school and taking on the career of becoming a printer. And that's for all you all to think about as you're going through this. Like, it's not suited for everybody. And I tell a lot of people, that's what I did. I just I didn't even finish graduate degree, and I just started working for Saul LeWitt, and one thing led to another, and I wanted to have my own studio practice, but it has suffered over the years because I shouldn't say suffered. I've kept it. It's just different for me because I became a printer, and that's what I do, and I'm really lucky that that's what I do because I can work with artists, and I can work with the people who I bring into the crew to learn. And so that's why we started this educational program where we have an apprenticeship program now, because teaching, which I enjoy really, really a lot, I love it, but I was lucky. I was gonna say just adjunct. I was adjunct, goddammit, and but I enjoyed it. I didn't have to sit in meetings and everything. I got a lot of freedom to do what I wanted to do. And I love PNCA for that, and I'm sorry for the other things, but we started this program because what I saw is a lot of people weren't learning the craft and the skills that Oliver's talking about, and in many of the institutions that I was lucky enough to teach in. So we want to train young people to do this stuff, and then they can go on and decide and it will inform their studio practice and their career, even if they don't become printers or printmakers. We teach hard work and how to pay attention to detail, and that works whether you're a restaurant server or whatever. And it's hard work, and but it's a big decision when you come out of school. Like, do I want to go into a print studio and do this for a couple of decades? It's been very rewarding for me, but I have to struggle to get back to my studio practice. So it's a lot to think about. Not everybody's cut out for it, you know. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, but as Oliver says, you have to go and do a lot of things, but you don't need me to tell you that. It's like, just go out and do a lot of different kinds of work and find time for your studio practice. You're going to be burnt out, but you still have to do it, and then stick with it, because once you get out of school, it's really, 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 really hard to keep your practice going, especially in this day and age when, as Oliver says, artists aren't supported in this culture. And it's not like this in Europe or Japan or China or Korea. Artists are not respected. or understood the way they should be.
Success is rewarded. So if you understand what I'm saying, when you're considered successful, then you're supported. Well, hell, you're okay then. What the heck? You needed before. You needed when you're finding yourself. That is when a culture really understands the worth of people who are makers to the culture. When you're successful and already recognized, then they go like, well, please, it's the scuffle that's where you need help. When you're trying to find a workplace to do work, you see, consideration. And it's true what he said. I didn't know that in Europe, the young people they don't have money, well, where would you get it? They take into consideration, oh, you're an artist. Oh, well, we'll rent you that room. Yes. I mean, you're not a foreigner. They understand when you say that. They do. They make a way. It's difficult in the United States. This is a country that doesn't recognize your ability unless you're successful at it. And if you understand that irony, to get successful at it, you may have no kneecaps by the time you're getting worn out your arms trying to get to be finished. Anyway, enough of that. I just wanted to add to that. The only other thing I would add is that if you are committed, you may have to wanting to, being driven to make something. You don't have to know why. This is not, you don't have to psychoanalyze. You just need to be moved to make. You don't need to psychoanalyze yourself. But in living, you may not be able to come at it directly, but don't let it go. You may have to do things that deflect a direct relationship with the making process, but dabble, don't let it go. But this is living. There's always interruptions when you think you can go straight ahead. You know, they're really powerful interruptions, like getting married. Well, it's very difficult to maintain a making thrust. You have to have a little money, or hopefully born into something to be able to do it. So it may interrupt for a while, but you can still be doing something. Always don't let it die. It's the ups and downs of life. You got to get prepared. Don't be middle class and think that it's supposed to be rosy because they said, and they do say this, is very middle class, you get married happy ever after. Whoever said that's the dumbest in the world. But that's fundamental to how people are trained to believe. And so the same thing is true. That generally you think you must succeed because you got an MFA. No, you're living life. And just all I can say is that in my own so-called career, I don't think of what I'm doing as a career. That's talk. A career is much more straight ahead than how I do what I do. It wasn't like working at IBM. First you get on that, then you get promoted to that, then that. Not at all. Like that. Like that. I'm just living. But what I learned in doing it is how much I really wanted to make things. Really, really. I mean, and I didn't need to be flattered to do it. I didn't need. There's a time when you get support. You're in school, you get a lot of support. Your peers, the instructors, support. Now when you're on your own, you shouldn't need it. Back your own self up. You stand behind the work because that is what you're about. You don't suddenly cave in. You're an adult. You got all this. When you're in school, people are really in your corner. Every criticism, they're dealing with your work. They're building you. When you get out on your own, lean on yourself. Lean on until you get used to it. You understand what I'm talking about. Don't flake out on your own desires. I really want to do it, but do something. Okay, yeah, I know you don't like me now, but that's the way it is.
Does anyone have any questions?
Can you talk a little bit about some of the themes you're exploring in your work right now, and maybe in this box set?
Well, I'm not exploring themes. I have thematic images that I use that show up a lot. They're mine. I'm not exploring themes. The whole point of the folio was to honor my friend by publishing his scores, handwritten, not his scores published, by but his hand. It was for me the beauty of him just writing it out. Because when he's doing that, what's interesting, when he's doing that, he's hearing music. It's one of the, to see the score and all the marks, you understand? Like the dots and the dashes. He's hearing music. It's not, he thinks in sound. Believe it or not, I think in visual. It's different than thinking in language. So when every mark he makes is the result of him objectifying and notes what he's hearing. So that's an ambiance just in the script itself. Got it? So then what I decided is I would use drawings that I made. I'm not trying to make music. That's stupid. I'm not trying to draw music. That's silly. And there's no theme, like Frankie and Johnny, so I don't draw Johnny and Frankie. What I was trying to do is match images with the ambiance, the feeling. You looked at the script, and we tried to get everything to relate. These marks with that, just the contrast. Now, fortunately, this is interesting. This image had nothing to do with a painter. Nothing. But this title and serendipity, they fit. Do you understand? But the beauty of it really was first aesthetics. This page against that page. You understand just the beauty of this strong black and white and this fiercely sharp and these marks. And there's just a beautiful aesthetic to it. Ain't it pretty? I mean, seriously. Aesthetically, you don't have to read music, just the combination. And then with Paul, and then we decided on order, and you don't see all the other things. How much space between. And the same is true here. This color, and then Shinkole won out. You didn't get that. You didn't get that part, huh? They didn't get it. He won out. He made me, I go like, that should be Shinkole. Over the script, over the score. I go like, really? I say, yeah, work better with the green. And of course it does. The relationship with that soft, it's not stark like the other one against this. Just beautiful, the harmony. That's what I was looking for. That anybody that had this folio, when they picked it up, would just be beautiful to look at. And that somehow would fit, you understand? Not rationally, not in stories, but you go like, yeah, this is right. You understand? This is another thing. I think we're doing it too. Don't you think so? This is going to be on YouTube, and all these little gestures I'm making up. Yeah.
For all the printers in the room, don't look too closely. This is a early proof, and the sheet pretty ratty and not. So that's not what the final product looks like. They're like, you call this craftsmanship? Look at that. Anyway, we're talking about the images and the color and not the edges. I just had to point that out. Sorry.
That's why he gets it right. You see, all those things. I wouldn't have noticed them myself. See, I'm thinking of this larger relation harmony, so it's okay. I'm saying it's okay. He says not. And that takes it to another level. That's my need. See, it informs me. I go like, yes, that's right. I want it there. And by him seeing it on my terms, that it's not where you want it to be until you do this. That's collaboration. Oh, I don't know who that guy is. Oh, boy. You
Other
never
question?
look like you would like to look. I would like to look artistic. You know, I've seen pictures in 19th century, they would berets, they look so cool. They do. I mean, art historians pick perfect pictures to show art students, and you want to look like that. It ain't happening, you know. Anyway, I'm just having fun now. I got to be careful.
That's on our Dufa press. You have a Mylander upstairs. It's great for monotypes. You all should check it out. Cassie?
Hello. I just have a question about the printer-artist relationship. And in the case when it doesn't go smoothly, how do you surpass that? Are there techniques? Are there situations where you just walk away?
Cool down.
Cool down, yeah. Well, many people have heard me say, now that I own my own shop for a few years, and now that I have Harry Schneider as a partner, our rule is we don't work with anyone we haven't met, and it can get really not good. And when you're working for another shop and you have no control over the artist who walks in the room, it can be. The thing about Oliver is he's worked in a lot of print shops and he knows his way around the studio. You could probably speak to this, Matthew. You've worked with a lot of printers, and then I imagine you have something to say too, Oliver, about it.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I think there's situations that you just have to bite your tongue and deal with it and move and hope you're going to get through it. Knowing that later on when you're in control that I'm not going to bring that person in, or I'm not going to treat a person that way, and it kind of carries over. And I think there's probably centuries of that happening within the print community, and I think that could be why we're all pretty laid back to begin with. I think it's pretty consistent with most print shops, but you do get the thorn that comes in and you're just like, well, how do I navigate this? And it's just, you got to be human and do the best you can and know that, you know, there is an end to it. And I'm not going to bring that person back.
Yeah, and you have to understand our role as printers. We're print publishers. We're calling the shots. You know, we invite the artists, and we do contract work too. And we don't do contract work for anything we don't believe in 100%. We turn down a lot of jobs, but we're the publishers, so we call the shots. But sometimes you'll find yourself in a shop where you can't call the shots. So I owe it to myself, but also the people, the interns, and all the people who are working with us, that we're not going to put them in a position to have that toxic atmosphere. You know, it's just, life's too short. And I've been lucky. We've worked with a lot of great people.
But into each life some rain must fall. So, you know, it ain't permanent. So then you never work with that person again. But sometimes you want things compatible, but they don't work out that way. And it's, you take it in stride, I think. I really mean that. You know, I've worked with people that, you know, you end up hating them. But, you know, you didn't know before. You didn't know ahead of time. You know, a lot of stuff. You know, some things you could predict. You got a little wisdom that feels good. I just said that when I first met him, it felt okay. That was good. But we're actually working. But I had experience in a good deal of experience in printmaking shops. I mean, professional. So I understood the limits. I mean, see, I wasn't a novice. I know what they do, and I understand the machines, and I've done printing myself, so that helped a lot to understand what he's talking about. So sometimes you're working with somebody who is not familiar with the craft they're dealing with, and they don't get the limitations of the craft. You know, so you can't explain it to them because they don't understand. Well, there it is. And they won't go to school or something, so, you know, what can you do? But I just think you get rough spots, that's all.
Other questions from the audience? Oh.
Harry Schneider, you want to come up?
Shout out to Harry.
I recognize you, Harry. Yeah, no, he's in the audience. Yeah, Harry Schneider. Harry was in the grad department here. So I'll tell a little story quickly. So you're all going to do your thesis, and I was not his mentor, but I was on the panel. And we had been working with a printer Brad Brown. Harry was running the Mylander for Brad in the class that you're taking, similar to what you have with Matthew. Brad Brown said, Harry's the best printer I've ever worked with. And Brad's worked in all the major studios in the country, and he'd always also worked with me, so Harry's the best one. And when we go in after the thesis thing and you grill them, and I said to Harry, what are you going to do with your life, you know? Do you want to be his thesis was strong. He has a studio practice, but do you want to be a printer? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, you sure? He's like, yeah. I said, so I invited him to San Francisco, and he interned for me for a couple years, and then now we're business partners.
Yes, sometimes it works out.
Sometimes it works out.
Well, thank you both for joining us tonight, and thanks everyone for coming. And hopefully we'll be visiting the studio later, early next week, to see kind of some of the work being completed. So excited about that. So yeah, well, thank you everyone, and have a good night.